Well, it's been a rough fall for our plants. Right now, all these plants here that are in pots have been crammed into this space because a lot of them used to be under the big lychee tree, and of course that was cut way back, and it's being treated every couple weeks for the lychee leaf curl mite or Aranose mite. So this is temporary housing, but that hasn't been the only thing that's affected our plants. The last 3 weeks, the weather has been tough. You can see it's still blowing a lot. We've had, like the first week, I'd say about 14 inches of rain here. The second week, we had mostly wind, some rain, and then this most recent week, we've had a combination of wind and rain. So we knew that we had a lot of wind coming, so there were certain things that I did to prepare plants for the wind, and I want to show you some of those things. Here is one of my top work projects. This tree was originally Madame Francisque. In fact, right down here is probably where the graft was. Of course, it was, very tiny when it was grafted, but there's still some evidence. What I decided was this was the wrong variety for this particular location. Madame Francisque is a very nice tasting mango, but it really wasn't thriving here. So what I've been doing, this is the original variety of Madame Francisque, and I've been preparing a few scions here on some of the Madame Francisque growth. I'm grafting it in another location on the grove. But the other parts, the other growth here is a new variety. I decided to try out another variety in this location so that, I think it's going to do better, and I also will get a tree very quickly from grafting onto a big root system. I know well, here we go with some more wind. It's really windy, and these new grafts can be really, really tender. On big roots, the grafts grow really quickly, and so a lot of times it's like you have growth like this, which can really easily snap off of the tree. This is a little bit older growth, but the newer parts of this particular new variety, I have trimmed the leaves. Every single leaf has been trimmed, even the older ones, before we knew that there was going to be a whole lot of wind, reduce the surface area of that. The good news for these grafts is that it increases the probability that they will survive wind. There's less surface area for the wind to push against, and also, the new growth is somewhat protected. If it's really tender like this, I often will just cut it back a little bit. But as I said, this is not the new variety. This is the new variety, and it has survived. In fact, everything on this tree that I grafted survived because I trimmed the leaves. Let's go look at another tree right over here, though. This is a fairly comparable situation. Large tree just to the north. It's probably got a little bit more open area coming in from the east, and that's the dominant direction of most of the wind that we've gotten. I have, several grafts that have taken here. I trimmed the leaves, of course, and that was a good thing. But what I noticed is right over here, I missed trimming this one. This was fairly long. I got a picture of it before I trimmed it back. This I trimmed back after the wind, after it had pushed against the new growth, and this dehydration, you can see the ridges of the dehydrated part of the plant. That had already happened. So anyway, cut that back, and in the same breath practically I put another scion down here. So I'll have that variety growing on this plant, but it was a minor setback that this particular scion got ripped. I do see a little bit of a sign of hope. There's a little tiny green, what might be a new bud swelling. So possibly we'll still have that, but we do have the insurance of having a nice scion grafted right there. Good news for us is we didn't have any hurricanes in the vicinity until this last one. It didn't hit this area, but we did get a long stretch of impact because of the winds in that whole tropical system. But the good news for us is that months ago we started trimming all of our trees. I think we pretty much trimmed everything in the grove. And that new growth, after it's trimmed, they'll send out new growth, and that's very vulnerable to being snapped off of these trees. But we were well past that. All of the growth on the trees, from trimming, had hardened off. Occasionally, you'll see a little bit of a new leaf here and there, but the tree is like pretty quiet. It's a really good stage to be resistant to winds. Quickly point out this is our Duncan DeCarla topwork, and you can see all the leaves have been cut back to some extent. There was nothing blocking the east winds for at least 25 feet, but this has had zero damage. Everything has stayed intact. I even am harvesting or preparing a scion to harvest right over here. So there's a couple differences between these and the last two projects. Not only the location not having any protection, but also I started working on this particular project before doing the last two. So these, all this growth here has been on the tree longer, and it's more mature and stronger. I devoted a lot of attention to protecting my new grafts, and basically I forgot about something rather important, is protecting young plants that are in pots. And yesterday I passed by this particular plant, which used to be a nice avocado, and this was snapped off. So avocados are fairly easy to graft, so I thought I'd do a little experiment. Immediately I took off all the leaves because there's always a lot of moisture loss through the leaves. So I wanted to make sure that this didn't lose any more moisture. And I put it into a bottle of water. So, I should mention that I cut the end. Giving anything a fresh cut end will increase the ability of that to take up water. So it has hopefully gotten a little bit rehydrated, and I'm going to try grafting some of these parts of the plant onto another one, see if it takes. But I guess possibly the good news is that there is a little bit of hope for this plant to sprout out. You can see that it was grafted with a cleft graft, and here's a bud right there. I cut this back. I didn't want to cut back too far because there's a bud there. Looks like maybe a bud right there. We've got this unfortunate rip here, but that should heal over if things start growing up there. I will need to make sure that there are no sprout outs down below the graft, but I'd say that there's a pretty good chance that this was still alive and will produce the grafted variety. So that's a look at some of the things I've done around the grove to protect especially the new grafts from wind. During Hurricane Irma, I had a ton of new grafts on the trees. We knew that was heading our way. I did my best to protect as many as I could, which I did protect a lot, but I still lost over 100 grafts. So if you know that there's going to be a serious wind in your area, do what you can to protect your trees, but in my case, I always give the new grafts top priority because those are very vulnerable.